President, please be seated.
អង្គ
The court is now back in session, and I now give the floor to the defense counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia to resume the key document presentation. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 4 more Krang Tachan documents to go. First one is what we believe is a possible DK-era forgery, E3/2785. It's a letter signed by Son, a person named Son, addressed to Brother An, dated 7 March. English ERN 00322-193, Khmer 000791115, French 00753-636. The letter mentions persons who were trying to escape to Vietnam. However, during testimony before the tribunal, Tassan testified that while he accepted that other documents were written by him, this document was not my handwriting. The next document, Mr. President, is E3/2423. It's a note from San, a person called San, to an unknown recipient of unknown date, asking for further investigation or interrogation of certain prisoners. English ERN 0032210, English Khmer 007928. 79128, and French 0061172. The document mentions 2 prisoners, Hul and Sean, and asks about their network. Also, during his testimony, Tassan said, "This is not my handwriting." Lastly, finally, document E3/2452. This document appears to be a compilation including a letter written by Nov, dated 8 October 1977 from Srey Renong, English ERN 00843036, Khmer 00270998, French 008722836. The letter in question mentions a new person named Sen Q, who deserted his unit for 2 days. Witness Nut Nuv, who appeared in this trial segment, agreed that he had been a Srey Renong commune chief during the DK. However, he said twice in his live testimony that the letter was, and I quote, "not my handwriting," and that he could not recognize the handwriting. Nuv then clarified that there was no other person who may have been called Nov, and speculated that perhaps someone else, like a clerk, wrote this letter. The very last Krang Tachan document that I would like to present this morning, Mr. President, is an execution list, an alleged execution list of Lon Nol soldiers. It is a purported execution list of Lon Nol soldiers and officials in Tram Kok district, and the document's details are as follows: E3/4083. It's a document named number of prisoners. English ERN numbers are 00323-943 until 78. Khmer 00068-024 until 37, and French 007788851 until 79. As already discussed earlier, there are significant discrepancies between the Khmer document and its English and French translations. In the Khmer document, a notation appears in places throughout the document which we understand is translated as the initials KT. However, the English version used an X instead, while the French version used the word éliminer. But we contend that it has not been proven that the annotation KT appearing throughout the list clearly means Comtech, or that COMTEC unequivocally and only means executed. I further note that at least one soldier's alleged execution date is recorded as 8 January 1979. That is, as we all know, one day after the Vietnamese invaded. That is English ERN 00323945, Khmer 00068025, and French 00778863. Finally, Mr. President, I note that the Khmer original document is not an original at all, but a very poor quality copy. Indeed, the first Khmer to English translators believed they were unable to translate the document, instead placing a document on the case file indicating that the document was illegible and there was no translation. This concludes, Mr. President, Your Honours, my first part of my presentation. I move now to the second part, that is the living and working conditions in the Tramkok cooperatives. In this very short part, I will present a small group of 7 documents. First, I would like to present a pair of documents that provide some insight into DK policies in relation to health, E3/226. These are minutes of a meeting of the Ministry of Health and Social Affairs dated the 10th of June 1976, English ERN 001-83365, ending 67 and 69, Khmer 000-17150, ERNs ending 52 and 55, and French 0029-6159, and ERNs ending on 61 and 63. Mr. President, during this meeting, several reports were made concerning the health situation in DK, including the following, and I quote, "We were able to distribute medicines to bases as set forth in the party's direction. Up to date, there was no medicine that was decayed or destroyed by fire. The diet ration could be resolved by ourselves, and we made clothes for many units. In May 1976, we did not go and get fishes from the Ministry of Commerce. We were self-supported." You can find that on English ERN 00183365, Khmer 000-17150, and French 00296159. The following quote reads as follows: "We had produced medicine for malaria and all kinds of medicines and serums. However, we had postponed production of a number of medicines due to the shortage of raw materials. The capability of producing medicine was in line with what Ankar planned. English ERN 00183367, Khmer 0017152, and French 00296161. Although I also note that the word Ankar does not appear in the Khmer and French version of this document. This report, Mr. President, goes on to say that concerning medicine production, and I quote, "During the past 1 or 2 months, we had received much progress, more experiences in production and quality controlling sections, and as well as for those who operated the machines," end of quote. English ERN 00183367, Khmer 000-17152, and French 0029661. And in summary, this document concludes, and I quote, "The health issue was too much alleviated if compared to last year. But still there was significant shortfall of medicine both for people and domestic animals' diseases. After the war, many poisonous substances made life of people and domestic animals dangerous," end of quote. English ERN 00183369, Khmer 0017155, and French 00296163. The next document is E3/166. That's a revolutionary flag, issues 2 and 3, February, March 1976. ERNs 0051783324, Khmer 00063214 until 17, and French 00492779 till 80. And the issue of this revolutionary flag reported that, and I quote, "Since modern medicine is currently not plentiful, in their position as leaders, our cadres must think about making large sufficient quantities of traditional medicines of every type to treat and maintain the health of our people, doing the offenses to put up new petty dike systems and dig new canals during this dry season, and also for storage for when our people have their hands tied up in the rice farming offensive during the approaching rainy season." End of quote. It is also noted that, and I quote, "the Ministry of Social Affairs and Public Health must think about the entire country." End of quote. We can therefore see, Mr. President, Your Honours, that access to medicine and hospitals was a CPK priority, and moreover that there is no indication of a policy to systematically deny new people access to medicine and hospitals. The second part that I would like to discuss are CPK guidelines about so-called unacceptable behavior. It goes to acceptable and unacceptable behavior of the people and of cadres, specifically during the Democratic Kampuchea regime. And I would like to present 4 documents in this category. The first is a document that sets out the CPK leadership's overall view of base and new people. Document E3/216. These are standing committee minutes of 24 August 1975. English ERN 00850976, Khmer 00008489, and French 003433377. And in this document, it is written that, and I quote, "We prefer to talk about the overwhelming majority of base and new people who are good." End of quote. CPK leadership was also very careful to give guidelines throughout the decade period about bad behavior and how this should be corrected. My next document is E3/10. It's a revolutionary flag of September and October 1976. English ERN 00450530, Khmer 0006361, and French 00491892. In this issue, E310, the CPK leadership stresses that, and I quote, "internal contradictions must be sorted out as internal contradictions. They are our flesh and blood. They are not counter-revolutionary. They do not provoke and attack the revolution. These are contradictions due to misunderstanding. They must be sorted out by successive education." End of quote. As to how to do this, the flag goes on to explain that, and I quote, "One way is to educate, to do political, ideological, and organizational work within the general framework in order to lessen or postpone the contradiction and not let them be sharp all the time." End of quote. In E3/746, our next document, which is a revolutionary flag of July 1978, we can read the following on English ERN 00428305, Khmer 006450, That cannot be correct. I will give you a minute later, Mr. President, if that's all right, the full number. French 0006118886. The party leadership commends that, and I quote, they must be most vigilant about the stances and attitudes of carrying out work in bureaucratic, Mandarin, authoritarian, militaristic, liberal, single-minded, styles. The styles of taking no responsibility for anything vis-à-vis the party, the revolution, and the people. End of quote. And then revolutionary flag of July 1976, which is E3/4, English ERN 00268-924. And I apologize, maybe the Khmer number is just a smaller number. I see here Khmer 0062918, and the Khmer ERN number of the previous document is 006450. And the French ERN of E3/4 is 00349978. And this issue, Mr. President, explained that, and I quote, in order to build the designated party branches in the cooperatives, it is imperative to totally eradicate the leftist and rightist viewpoints. Leftist, meaning not believing in the masses, underestimating the mass movement, seeing all the masses as being the enemy. Rightist, meaning just continue to induct them carelessly, not based on the foundation of the party statutes. It is wrongly said by me, and I apologize, Mr. President. The Khmer ERN number of E3/746 is 00064,500. And the Khmer ERN of E3/4 I will give you in a short moment. Mr. President, the final document I would like to present...
President, Council Copper, please repeat the ERN number again. Thank you.
Yes, the Khmer ERN of E3/746 is 00064,500. And the Khmer ERN of E34 will follow shortly. Mr. President, the final document I would like to present in this second part of my presentation is an S21 confession of Chu Chet, the former secretary of the West Zone. As a preliminary matter, I noted that during yesterday's document hearing, the prosecution's response to our appeal brief was no.
President, Council Copper, please hold on, and Judge Lavenge, you have the floor.
Yes, Council Copy, what is the objective of using this document? Wouldn't it be better to wait for us to examine the facts regarding S21 before referring to this document?
Yes, however, the excerpt that I would like to cite relates directly to very relevant people in Sector 13 and District 105.
Council Koppe, do you intend to read the content of the confessions provided by Chu Chet at S21? Are you aware of the fact that the crimes of torture are part of the accusations leveled against the accused at the torture at S21?
I'm certainly aware, Judge Lavergne, but I think I'm intending to do the same thing, the exact same thing, as a matter of fact, that the prosecution was doing yesterday, reading a small part of a confession of a detainee. In this specific case, it is a passage relevant to Tram Kok district and Sector 13. So it is our position that if the prosecution is allowed to read excerpts from alleged confessions at Krang Tachan, we should be able to do the same in relation to this specific S21 confession from Chu Chet, when he speaks about Saum, the Sector 13 Secretary, Takiv, Saum's deputy, Pen, and like I said, Takiv, a member of the Tram Kok district. So I think, in essence, there is no difference whatsoever between what the prosecution did, reading excerpts of his confession to make his point, and reading parts of the confession of Chu Chet making our point.
President, the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is a world of difference between what we did and what Mr. Koppe wishes to start doing right now. First of all, we read from an interrogator's notebook. As is clear from the references I was reading, this is different than a confession signed by a prisoner. The identification of the prisoner's statements by the interrogators describing why they were arrested, that is admissible evidence. What Mr. Koppe wants to do now, if I understand, is to read statements in the body of the confession of Chu Chet, making assertions that certain cadres from the Southwest Zone were part of traitorous networks. He wants to use, and let's be very clear about this, Noon Chea in this courtroom wants to justify killing people by the confessions his people obtained by torture back in the 70s. Nothing could be more barred by the Torture Convention than that. That is exactly the purpose of the Torture Convention, is to prevent people from relying on confessions obtained by torture to prove the guilt of that person. So to say that we're doing the same thing, I could not disagree more.
Mr. President, we made a... Can I... We made a special appeal ground on this very issue. The Torture Convention absolutely protects the use, protects the accused or any accused or suspect against torture. The question whether certain elements from a confession which might possibly be torture tainted, whether they can be used for other purposes is something now to be debated by the Supreme Court chamber. But again, I do not see any difference in why it is that the prosecution is allowed to use parts of these confessions from Krang Tachan for their purposes, and we are not allowed to use parts of these confessions for our purposes.
President, Council Copper, the Chamber would like to invite you that the content of the records as a result of tortures will not be allowed to be read. When the Chamber allows the prosecution to read that record, only the annotation part was allowed by the Chamber. So there is a difference between allowing the annotation or the content of that record as a result of torture. Thank you.
So I understand that I have to move on. I cannot use part of his confession, which not necessarily is the result of torture, but I'll move on. Just to make sure that I will actually be in time. Yes, I think so. Mr. President, I move on to document E3/294. And this is a document relating to the treatment of targeted groups. In this part, I will focus on 3 specific groups, the Khmer Krom, the Buddhists, and former Lon Nol soldiers and officials. Khmer Krom is coming up all the time in this part of the segment. That's why we would like to say something about it as well. As we said yesterday and in earlier submissions, we question whether the Khmer Krom have a place as a targeted group within case 002/02 trial. However, assuming that the Chamber's forthcoming decision determines that they do, I want to mention 2 documents which we consider to be relevant. First of all, E3/294. That is a Foreign Broadcast Information Service compilation for October 78, which includes a 30 September 1978 report by the Phnom Penh Domestic Service in Cambodia on the visit of Japanese Friendship Association delegation to the Southwest region. English ERN 001-70173, and there are no Khmer or French translations. E3/294 details how the delegation has traveled to Takeo, where they interviewed some Khmer Krom who were described as, and I quote, victims of Vietnamese persecution and suppression, end of quote, and who, I quote, have taken refuge in Kirivong district. The report continues that, and I quote, the friendly Japanese visitors were shocked by the tales told by the Khmer Krom compatriots about the massacres and atrocities perpetrated by the Vietnamese with the aim of extermination the Khmer race in a most fascist and savage manner, end of quote. E3/2435, presented by the prosecution yesterday, that is a document from the Ang Ta Som Commune Chief dated 26 April 1977 and addressed to the Tram Kroc District Office requesting instructions in relation to the treatment of Khmer Vietnamese families. English ERN 003224141, Khmer 002710001, and French 006122225. The request details the situation of Khmer Vietnamese couples who request authorization to go to Vietnam. It notes that some Cambodian husbands had married Yun wives and some Yun wives had married Cambodian husbands. And the request said that if they were all Yun, they would send them to Angkar, but requested to know, and I quote, if it was like this, what would Angkar decide then? Please inform us. And end of quote. The second part is relating to the treatment of Buddhists. And there are 2 documents, or rather 1 document and 1 video clip concerning the Buddhists that I would like to show. And I would like to start with a video, which is a video E3/3201R. And this video depicts a visit by a delegation of top Vietnamese leaders to the DK in 1975. As the video shows, the delegation is taken to visit and admire the silver pagoda at the Royal Palace and the statues of Buddha it contains. The footage also clearly shows that the CPK key leaderships are in attendance, including Nguyen Chia and Pol Pot and the other members of the Standing Committee. I would like to note that it is the footage that we're interested in, not the commentary provided. But I do highlight that the commentary emphasizes that most Cambodians are Buddhists. Mr. President, I would now like to request the Chamber and the AV unit to play this video on screen. The relevant time point is from minute 6:30 till 8:55, so it's 2.5 minutes. AV unit staff, it is the file called Clip 1.
President, yes, you may proceed, and the AV unit, please show the video clip as requested by the Nguyen Chia's defense. The majority of Cambodian people are Buddhist, and they hold firm belief in the National United Front. Under the leadership of the Communist Party, Cambodian people have engaged bravely and vigorously in the resistance movement, which since 1970 resulted in the defeat of 100,000 American soldiers and their henchmen. Not only did we survive the campaign of intensive carpet aerial bombardment by B-52 bombers of the American imperialists, after a period of more than 100 days of non-stop storming attack, we finally foiled the Khmerization plan initiated by the American imperialists, and tens of thousands of the puppet soldiers have been smashed by our Cambodian armed forces. We completely liberated our country on 17 April 1975 and brought peace and harmony to our motherland. A friendly visit to Cambodia by the delegation of the Labour Party of Vietnam denotes the greatest significance. The visit coincides with the fundamental situational shift in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. The struggle by the people in the three nations has resulted in the greatest success. The revolutionary movement in the three-country Indochina has reached a new stage and brought along a never-before-seen historical symbol of hope. Under the leadership of the Communist Party of Cambodia, led by Comrade Secretary General Salot So, during the last 3 months,
the next document, Mr. President, I would like to present is E3/2818. That is a book from Ian Harris called Buddhism under Pol Pot. I would like to refer to English ERNs 007404011, ending in 033 until 5, 318 till 21, 083 until 4, 892, and 996 until 7. For Khmer and French, Mr. President. The book is only partially translated, and not these specific. Some of these specific passages are. So I will highlight that when I read these passages to you. Ian Harris suggests that there are other causes for poor treatment of the Buddhists, such as the US bombing of pagodas and the fact that monks were used as spies during the Republic. Harris noted that during the Civil War, 1/3 of pagodas were destroyed by American bombing. That is English ERN 00704015 until 7, Khmer 00791318 till 21, which were specifically targeted for strategic purposes. That is English ERN 007048083. Ian Harris also writes that during the DK there were locations where people were still allowed to perform Buddhist worship during the DK, English 00704011, or individuals given such permission at English ERN 00704033 until 5. Harris also suggests that, and I quote, despite the very significant losses sustained by the population of which disrobed monastics formed a part, there was no policy for the systematic liquidation of monks in democratic Kampuchea. End of quote. And you can find that at English ERN 00704083. Moreover, Harris notes that it was a fact that the Khmer Republic used monks as spies. The spies that were caught were killed because of their being a spy, which is unrelated to the fact that their status as monks as well. You can find that on English ERN 007038892 and 007039996 until 7. When monks were executed, Harris said this was, and I quote, not primarily because of their commitment to the Buddhist religion, but was related to the fact that they were considered to be enemies associated with higher levels of the previous regime. End of quote. English ERN 00704084. And finally, Mr. President, in Ian Harris's book, it says that 2 years of research indicates that abbots and their assistants were rarely executed simply by virtue of their seniority. And you can find that at English ERN 00704084. I would like to end my presentation with another video, Mr. President, Your Honours. It's a video which relates to former Lon Nol soldiers and officials and their practices during the Civil War. It is E3/3116R, and what I would like to show you is an excerpt of Australian journalist John Pilger's documentary, Cambodia, called The Bloodiest Domino. And the relevant excerpt is 2 minutes from 22:22 to 24:11. And the documentary is explaining that eating the enemy's liver is an ancient tradition of warfare in Cambodia, and the film shows this practice done by Lon Nol soldiers. And if you allow me, Mr. President, then I would like to tell the AV unit that this is a file called Clip 2.
Perhaps you could explain the relevance of this video for this part of the trial?
I actually have my point here after the video.
But the relevance should be explained before we decide whether you can show it or not, for us to be able to rule.
That's fine. While former Lon Nol soldiers and officials are usually portrayed as hapless victims of a brutal Khmer Rouge, this video suggests otherwise. It shows that some practices, often wheeled out as examples of the Khmer Rouges, are uniquely depraved in humanity, and recently highlighted, by the way, by Ambassador David Sheffer in a speech at an American university, had in fact long been practiced by the Lon Nol army and had been documented and screened in the public domain. And this video, in our view, perfectly illustrates the point we have sought to make today and throughout this trial so far, and that is that we need to set aside the popular narrative of what happened in the DK, what we think we know, and come to this trial with a critical and open mind. So I think this video is very relevant, especially also in the light of Sai Sen's testimony and how it is reported. I think we tried to show this video earlier, and then I remember you said this is something that we should not put before a witness, but rather presented during a document hearing. The practice of eating livers of dead corpses is apparently something that was done frequently by Lon Nol soldiers and officials, and I think it could necessarily put this practice in context in relation to Sai Sen's testimony. So I think although it is footage that shows events prior to 1975, I think it's very relevant, and it is on the case file. It's been there for a long time on the case file, and I think we should be allowed to show these 2 minutes to the chamber.
President, I'd like to hand the floor to Judge Co-Defense to respond to the request by the Defense Counsel for Nuon Chea. Judge Friends, you have the floor.
The Chamber hopes that the idea is not to support an argument that whatever somebody has done before he's potentially being killed justifies this killing. So, for the very limited purpose to put the practice of eating livers and various forms of cannibalism, which have been broadly discussed in this tribunal and in the press, into context, we are allowing to view this video, or the part you want to show us.
Thank you, Judge Vance. It is video clip 2 for the AV unit, Mr. President.
President, the AV staff, please play the second video clip as identified by Counsel Copper for Nuon Chea.
While Sihanouk was rallying the countryside, in the cities, Lon Nol was rallying popular support for the expulsion of the Vietnamese from their sanctuaries. In the ensuing confusion, Atrocities were committed against the Vietnamese who had lived in Cambodia for generations. While thousands of innocent Vietnamese were killed, ancient traditions of warfare would dictate a more gruesome fate for enemy soldiers.
Culturally, there were great gaps between the Western perceptions of what was acceptable and Cambodian ideas of what was acceptable. When we had film of Cambodians cutting open bodies and ripping out the liver and eating them, Western opinion was pretty shocked by the Lon Nol forces doing that. But this is what Cambodians were doing by tradition. It is said that it's getting the spirit, the strength of your enemy. It's a ritual. Quite frequently in the early years of the war, as a mark of friendship, they would ask you to come and join them in eating the liver of the dead. On one occasion, I was having lunch with the governor of one of the provinces, and out on the lawn in front of the governor's residence, there were all these so-called Viet Cong bodies, corpses laid out, all of them slashed open and the liver taken out, and a truck arrived and they started tossing these dead bodies onto the truck. It was not very appetizing.
And with this video clip, Mr. President, I conclude my document presentation.
President, thank you, and the time is also convenient for us to have a lunch break. We take a break now and return at 1:30 this afternoon. Security personnel are instructed to take Kyu Sampon to the waiting room downstairs and have him return to the courtroom this afternoon before 1:30. The court is now in recess.
សូមចេញក្រោកឈរ